All right, so button listening with Java and Firmata for Java. And I'm going to set up my three libraries, JSSC, Firmata for J, and SLF4J JCL. I'm going to import those using Maven. And then from there, I'm going to create a pins class for some constants. I'm going to reference my blog page here with all the constants that are necessary. So D6 and D4 for the button and the LED. Next up, the main class where I'll import the two Firmata for Java classes. And then my skeleton. So the three steps that I want to go through, which is initialization of the board, setting up the LED and the button, and then adding my button listener, or the call to the button class through the listener. All right, next up, I set up, let's see, this is the LED and the button object. Now I get the inputs and outputs mixed up. I'll fix that in a second. Change my names, then I realized later on that I should not change the name to that. Anyway, I'll modify it as I go along, but basically there's a section here on the LED, a section on the button as well. I have to make sure my input is set correctly in set mode. And next up, I'm going to set up a button listener. Now, I'm doing this without actually having written the button listener class. IntelliJ will help me along with that just by setting up the code right here in main class, and then it creates the class for me. And because I'm implementing IO device event listener, I then get the skeleton for the 4 overrides that are necessary in the implementation. And I'm only going to end up using one of the 4 methods, so I only have to really override one and fill it in. Now, it's important to point out that overriding and implementation are examples of inheritance and polymorphism. So the implementation is part of inheritance, and the overriding is part of polymorphism in Java. And we're going to be looking at the method for on-pin change so that I can detect a button push and release using Firmata for J. And here I have to make sure that the index of the event is not one of the buttons. And there I will just do a simple return if it's not the case, if it is not a button. And then from there I have to implement what happens when the button event occurs, which is changing the pin value from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. I'm also going to print out something to the screen so I can see that the event happened. All right, so now we're going to test it out. And I messed up here. I got the name of the USB port wrong, so I need to fix that. It took me a little while to figure that out. So I unplugged and plugged back in and realized there was something wrong. So you can see me here figuring this out in real time. Yeah, and I know what this is like for students when you get error messages and you're not sure why. Well, in this case, it's because it couldn't find the USB port because I forgot a slash. All right, I'll get it eventually after unplugging and plugging back in. Yeah, there we go. /dev. Now, if you're on Windows, it's COM3, COM4, COM5 or something like that. But anyway, this is in Mac OS. Now I run it and we're good. So now I can press the button on the board. So you can see there's a connection to Firmata on my USB and on the Arduino board. And if I press the button, the LED toggles. So I press and release, and the LED changes based on whether I'm pressing or releasing. Just like that. So this is a button listener, and it's an example of dealing with events in Java using real hardware.